On today's show, it's a series check-in with the radio play-by-play voice of the Florida Panthers, Doug Plagens. We're going to discuss the injury updates for the Cats ahead of Game 3 Thursday night, and we're going to discuss what kind of history the Florida Panthers could be making if they're able to come back.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, June 8th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez. You can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers and on Instagram as well at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here to get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Cats fans, it is a game day. The Florida Panthers, 2 days off, travel day yesterday, practice today. And the Cats are going to be right back at it tonight as they host their first Stanley Cup final game since 1996. And their first one at FLA Live Arena, of course, 1996 was held at the old Miami Arena. And very, very excited for sure to be attending this in person. Of course, the day prior to it, I will actually be in Estero, Florida for Game 3 of the Florida Everblades and Idaho Steelheads. So by the time this drops, we will know what the final result of that game will be, as well as the Miami Heat and Denver Nuggets game 3 on Wednesday night as well. But it's so crazy how the ups and downs of the season with the Florida Panthers and of course life happening as well. And we had actually a little bit of news as far as Brandon Montour, as far as his baby being born, Kai Wade Montour as well. After game 1, he found out that his wife was going into labor, flew back to South Florida as soon as game 1 was over, got back at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, delivered the baby. His wife delivering the baby, went back to Vegas and got back a little. I believe it was past 9 o'clock Pacific time, and it's crazy the turnaround. And I tweeted this earlier with Kai Wade and the middle name Wade being the middle name of his son. It's crazy how he came into this world with the Florida Panthers being down 0-2. And let's not forget that there was a Wade that came on the scene in the sports scene in South Florida when the Miami Heat were down 0-2 in 2006. And look what happened there for the Miami Heat there. But I also want to discuss more about Paul Maurice's conversation with the 32 Thoughts podcast. And it was a pre-recording before even game 1 started. And Paul Maurice was talking about how this Stanley Cup final was going to be won, and discussed mostly that it was going to be won in the slot. Bruce Cassidy spoke about it earlier, how the Vegas Golden Knights, if they were going to win the Stanley Cup, it was going to be in the slot as well for VGK as well. And it's really proven that in the first few games of the Stanley Cup final. And it's crazy because the Panthers are controlling the shot attempts at 5-on-5, but not getting as much up in front as they want to be. And even in their few breakaway opportunities and chances in front of net, of course, Nick Cousins in game 1, the Carver Hagee breakaway in game 2 early on, and Aiden Hill is right there to stop it. I mean, the expected goals even, I mean, it favors the Florida Panthers 4.6 to 3.9 in favor of Florida at 5-on-5. And we're going to dig more into that in the conversation with Doug Plagens later on in the program. And just a teaser about how we are very confident if this game stays at 5-on-5 in game 3 and beyond. But also going back to Paul Maurice's comments based on the slot, it's also going to need to be won in the neutral zone as far as breaking up passes and with how VGK is great at at getting through the neutral zone with their speed as well, especially if they're exiting, going on their stretch pass, and then catching Florida as well in a change as well when it comes to that part of the game. And of course, Sergei Bobrovsky being let out to dry throughout the third period of game one, and then through the first 4 goals in game 2. And of course, the team not doing Alex Lyon any favors once he did come into the game as well. But even we've been talking about it. The local writers have been talking about it, but even the national guys have been talking about it as well. And Elliot Friedman was like, they're not going to win this series if they can't protect Bobrovsky out in front, and even screening their own goaltenders as well, which we spoke all about Josh Mahura with Frank Fort as well. He's a -3 in the series for the Florida Panthers. It's going to have to be a little better. And Aaron Ekblad and Gus Forsling, that's supposed to be your top pairing, and that the top pairing has just not been great for the Panthers. A lot of miscommunications in their own end, losing puck battles deep in their own zone, and the best pair has been Mark Stahl and Brandon Montour, despite what we saw in that power play against Jonathan Marchessault when he scored in game 1. That has that at 5-on-5, that has been the best pair for the Florida Panthers as well. It's not a spot that you want to be in if you're the Cats, obviously, but there is a little bit of recent history about teams that have gone down 0-2 and won it all, and 2 teams that have been there were the 2009 Penguins against the Detroit Red Wings and the 2011 Boston Bruins against the Vancouver Canucks, which you hear Canadian hockey fans and media saying about how South Florida doesn't deserve to be in the Stanley Cup final. But then you see after game 7 of the Stanley Cup final in 2011, Vancouver Canucks fans going on riots in the streets for losing a hockey game as well. So you're definitely not going to see that in Florida if the Florida Panthers, even if they lose the Stanley Cup final as well. So think about that a little bit, about deserving and all that stuff, and how people overall conduct themselves too. So think about that. But yeah, also, who do I want to see more as far as getting involved in play? I want to see someone like Sam Reinhart get involved. 3 shots on goal through 2 games as well. I know he's playing on the third line. You're not getting as much minutes. And I know, especially with 11F7D for the Panthers, you are also getting maybe a shift or 2 here and there on the fourth line. And we don't know if they're going to go 11F7D as well. I mean, Radko Gudas, he didn't practice, but Paul Maurice said that he's expected to play at Toulouse 3 and it is not. But, we've seen this from Paul Maurice over and over again, where he says one thing and then the opposite happens. It's kind of like the whole Ron Burgundy meme from Anchorman. I don't believe you. So, sorry, Paul, but I'm not sure if I'm after 90 plus games, if everything with Radko Gudas is definitely, if he's definitely going to play on Thursday nights. But I'll believe, my mindset is I'm going to believe it till I see it when I do arrive at morning skate tomorrow for game 3 of the Stanley Cup final. But also Barkov, he's not even in the top 10 in shots for the Panthers through 2 games too. And we spoke about how the top line of the Panthers were outshot attempted, outscored as well. You want to see more out of that line as well. Of course, the defensive clinic that Barkov goes when it comes to puck retrieval in their own zone, but you want to see them drive more a play, and of course the ability as well to get it out to Carter Verhaeghe, who can snipe it as well. You want to see more out of that top line as well for the Panthers. So that's a line that you definitely got to see step up. And of course of course, you can have the top line step up all they want, but if your top pair is not gonna communicate well, especially when they're going up the top guns of Jack Eichel and Ivan Barbashev, it's not going to do any favors of it, and it's not going to matter what you do on your offensive end as well. So those are the players who you want to see more out of when it comes to when this Florida Panthers team does eventually make it back home to, well, they are already back home, but once they hit the ice in a Stanley Cup final setting. Great thing about what's going on in the arena is they have the Stanley Cup final banner up. I'm excited to see what the TNT stage is going to be, the stage outside the arena when Flo Rida plays as well, which the concert will be at 6 p.m. And of course, the Florida Panthers are allowing fans to watch the game outside at the JetBlue tarmac for Game 3 in Sunrise, Florida as well. But we're going to get into our conversation with the radio play-by-play voice of the Florida Panthers, Doug Plagens. We're going to discuss all about practice. We're going to discuss about the vibe check after the Florida Panthers spoke to the media after Wednesday's practice. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Game Time. And buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has the best deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, hockey, comedy, theater, and more. For Game Time guarantees you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONHL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And welcoming in our special guest here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And we're doing our 4th and final series check-in through the Stanley Cup playoffs. And we are here at the end, Doug Plagens, radio play-by-play voice of the Florida Panthers, and grateful for you to once again be on for another series check-in. How are you doing today, my friend?
Doing well. And as always, Armando, thank you very much for having me here. It's always great to check in and chat with you.
Yeah, definitely great to be chatting with you. And of course, you just got back from the arena from Panthers practice today. And of course, getting back here to South Florida yesterday, as far as the Panthers going down 0-2, and also not only how are you feeling about the Panthers and how they've gone through 2 games, but how great is it also to have your broadcast partner Billy Lindsay with you on the road throughout these first 2 games of the Stanley Cup final?
No, it was great. It's always great working with Billy, and it's great to be able to share these experiences with him and to have him up there in the booth. He's been unbelievable to me from day one, and and any of the Panthers fans out there who've had a chance to meet Billy over the years, and I know there are a lot, but I've told a ton of people that I think Billy and I worked like one period together, and it felt like we'd been working together for years, because he's just such a pro on the air, and just such a good guy, and just such an easy guy to get along with and work with. So it was great to have him there, and great to be able to share these experiences throughout the playoffs with him. So that part obviously exciting to work with Billy, and always is. Getting back home, obviously big for the Panthers to get back home here. They'll be looking for a bounce back, no doubt, in Game 3. But when you look back at these playoffs, we've said it a number of times, this team has come up with some of its biggest performances when it looked like maybe their backs were against the wall, or, they're a team that looks like sometimes they find the most comfort in situations when a lot of other teams might be extremely uncomfortable. So they're going to try and channel some of that. You look back to the Boston series in round 1, and Vegas and Boston, 2 very similarly constructed teams. And oddly enough, the current Vegas coach was the Boston coach for a long time prior to that. But you look at this matchup here and the way things are right now, down 3-1 to Boston, going to Boston for Game 5 was probably a more desperate situation than the Panthers are facing right now. So they've been in a tougher spot in these playoffs than this right here. That being said, it's ultra important to get a bounce back here in Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. But this isn't the toughest situation this Panthers team has faced in the playoffs, and they were able to find their way out of that one and win that first round series against the Bruins in 7 games, as we all know. So this team absolutely capable of pulling off something like that against a very good hockey team, and doing that against Boston in round 1. That was certainly nothing to sneeze at. That was an unbelievable accomplishment what the Panthers pulled off there, and that shows that they're capable of pulling this off too.
Yeah, and you made a great point with them coming back home versus after Game 4 they were going on the road against the Boston Bruins and all that. And it's just seeing the pictures from what people have been posting on Twitter today about the sound system with the arena, the Stanley Cup Final banner up in the arena as well. I can only imagine the excitement that's going to be when it's approaching game time on Thursday night. But it's funny because it took a little bit of a while for the Panthers to find their identity this season. It really took until like February for this Panthers team to really, maybe you could even argue late January for this team. And
I think January is where a lot of things took shape.
Yeah, so definitely January. But it's not like the Panthers all of a sudden lost and got lost into like who they were as a hockey team when it comes to these first 2 games. And we can't deny that the Vegas Golden Knights have made goaltenders and defenses look bad in the postseason. I mean, I was even talking about it yesterday that there isn't a single goaltender in the Stanley Cup playoffs that's gone against the Vegas Golden Knights that has posed over a 900 save percentage as well. So as far as the Panthers' identity of closing the middle of the ice, and of course the goaltending. How are you seeing the Panthers and their adjustments made for going into Game 3?
Well, I think for the Panthers, really, they did a lot of things that would work against a lot of teams. Adin Hill made some huge saves. Look back Game 1; it's been well documented. If Adin Hill doesn't make that miraculous stick save on Nick Cousins in the second period, think about how different that game could look. No doubt. If the Panthers were able to cash in on that one right there and potentially take a lead into the second intermission, a situation where the Panthers haven't lost in these playoffs when they've taken a lead into the second intermission. So again, it's a series that really does come down to a play here and there. And I mentioned Game 1, but Game 1, the Panthers were 2-2 going into the third period. So that game was truly up for grabs, and obviously they didn't get the result they were looking for in Game 2. But looking at those first couple of games and moving into this one here, there are a lot of things they can build on. And if they just keep generating the shot volume like they have been, you like their chances. Now, at the same time, Adin Hill's playing really well. He has been throughout these playoffs. He's a big guy, sees the puck well. And, maybe it's going to take a couple of bounces here and there. In Game 2, when they ultimately did get one past Adin Hill, it was Anton Lundell banking one off Alec Martinez's ankle. So maybe it's going to take something like that to kind of get things rolling. But there's no doubt going into Game 3, the big thing there is the Panthers are going to be able to feed off the home crowd. And I know a lot of the folks that you have tuned in here are people who've been to games throughout these playoffs. The energy's been outstanding. It's definitely been noticed by everybody. And Paul Maurice has said that's kind of the difference that you get when you're at home. If you're on the road, even on a sequence where you don't score, if you have a big flurry, if you hit a post, if something like that happens, you have the energy of the crowd building. If that happens on the road, you don't have that same energy building behind you. So I think that's where the Panthers can get that good start they're looking for in Game 1, and they're in Game 3, and they've been happy with their starts through Games 1 and 2. If they can get more of that in Game 3, and then of course the added variable of having the home crowd behind them for Game 3, I think that could really help snowball things in the Panthers' way. And I think you're looking at 2 teams here who feel really good about their chances the longer the game stays at 5-on-5. So I think obviously that's going to be imperative. You knew it was going to be coming into the series, but we've certainly seen that as things have taken shape here. But you look at the Vegas Golden Knights. I mentioned it on the air. if we compare them to the teams the Panthers have played during these playoffs, hard to say. They might even be a little bit faster on the transition than the Boston Bruins. Mm-hmm. They have more heaviness and more jam than the Toronto Maple Leafs did, and they have more finish than the Carolina Hurricanes did. So this is a team that has it's very much a combination, I think, of the three teams that the Panthers played in the first three rounds. But the Panthers, like I said, they have the ability to come back in a situation like this. There's no doubt they came back in a more difficult situation back in round one against a historically good regular season team. So they're certainly capable of turning the tables here in this series against Vegas.
We're going to pause this conversation with the radio play-by-play voice of the Florida Panthers, Doug Plagens, to tell you all about our sponsor, Bird Dogs. And the warm weather is finally here. Well, it's been here in Florida, and that means one thing: shorts. But with shorts, finding the right fit is always a challenge. With Bird Dogs, you no longer have to worry about finding the right fit. They got a style for every occasion and a fit for every preference, from khaki to Oxford shorts to gym shorts and swim trunks, all equipped with a built-in liner for enhanced comfort. Go and pursue the Bird Dogs collection now to find your right fit. And be sure to check out their line khakis, joggers, and sweatpants as well. Stop searching for the perfect fit for shorts. Head to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL right now. If you enter promo code LockedOnNHL at checkout, you'll receive a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. Promo code LockedOnNHL. Yeah, and 4 comeback wins, even though the Vegas Golden Knights do have 9 of them in the postseason here. You just can never write this team off. And you mentioned something about sequence with crowd feeding off, and I think of something like the power play, the first power play that they had in Game 2, where they had 5 shots on goal, and the puck was moving really well as well for the Florida Panthers there. And you can only imagine how that could happen when they do return to Sunrise, Florida. Even if they don't score, how they could feed off, even when the guy is coming out of the penalty box as well. But the Panthers did practice today, and do you want to give us an update on what the coaching staff said about certain injuries as far as during their media availability?
Yeah, I think it sounds like they expect Radko Gudas to be ready. With Eetu Luostarinen, it sounds like more of a wait and see, and maybe we'll get some more information tomorrow as to his status. But this time of the year, a lot of things are kept pretty close to the vest. You don't expect anything to be too in depth, and Paul Maurice alluded to that when he spoke to the media today. But overall, you go across the league, and it's one of those situations. I think you go this deep into the season, you get into June, everybody's playing with a bump or a bruise here and there someplace. So it's for these two teams, both of them were pretty rested going into the series. You really had these two teams going into the series probably about as fresh as you could have two teams still playing in the month of June, feeling come Stanley Cup final time.
Yeah, and I also thought it was really hilarious about when Paul Maurice was asked about the lineup, and also gave a little bit of a response about splitting the Conn Smythe between Chucky and Sergei Bobrovsky going. So, and that leads me to the goaltending when it comes to the Panthers. Of course, the wheels kind of fell off for the Panthers in Game 2 very early on, especially on that final goal that Bobrovsky gave up on the rush, where Mark Stone has a broken stick. And there was actually a video of the equipment manager for Vegas handing him a stick very quickly before Howden scored there. But as far as Sergei Bobrovsky, how do you think his mindset is after Game 2, getting that rest towards the end of after the end of the game, and his approach going into Game 3?
Well, I think I would echo what Paul Maurice has really said throughout the season and throughout these playoffs. I think the least of anyone's concern is Sergei Bobrovsky's preparedness, because he's about the most prepared and dedicated to his craft and detail-oriented guy that you're going to find. So there's no doubt he's going to be ready. You look back to game 2, you mentioned that one off the rush, and in this series, we've seen Mark Stone make a couple of really heads-up plays, and that's, sometimes big time players, and that's what he is, come up with big time plays in certain situations. And one of those, to be able to go get a fresh stick off the bench and then reinsert himself right back into an odd man rush. That was just a heads up play that he made. But you look at just other things that have happened in that game too, specifically a couple of those shots Sergei Bobrovsky didn't even have a chance to see. So you can't. It's certainly. You look at that result and what Paul Maurice said today. Sergei's the least of anybody's concerns. He's going to be he'll be fine, he'll be ready, and he'll be good to go for game 3 coming up here, as he was confirmed that he will again get the nod in game 3. But he's been such an instrumental part of this Panthers team and so important to what they've done here through this run. And saying he's been important to this run is an understatement. To say the least, to say he's been important to this run. So, again, there's nobody more detail-oriented and dedicated and prepared than Sergei, and he'll be ready to go for game 3.
Yeah, and going back to the defense, and especially with penalty trouble that the Florida Panthers have had, and I mean, we can't necessarily be surprised with it, because it was the most penalized team in the regular season, and they were able to weather storms throughout especially the last 2 rounds between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Carolina Hurricanes and all that stuff. But of course, frustrations get in the way as well. And we're not here to. I'm done complaining about the officiating. I'm on to game 3 about whether we agree with all the misconducts or not. But how do you see the Florida Panthers as far as if they are to go down again even early on, about how they're handling things post whistle and all going into game 3?
Well, like you nailed it there. What's done's done. I'm not going to get into talking about dissecting the officiating from games 1 and 2, but I think the big overarching thing here is, and Paul Maurice has said it, the Panthers have been physical all season, all playoffs. They're not going to stop playing a physical brand of hockey. You can't pull back. You can't be tentative. That's just not, especially considering it's part of what got this team to where it is, playing that style. So there's no doubt, it's been said by multiple players, and everybody said that they would like to they'd like to take fewer penalties. They'd like to stay out of the box as much as they can. But you can expect this team to still play physical. So, it's one of those things. They'll just have to get a feel for how the game's being called early on and walk that line. And again, I think you're dealing with 2 teams here that both feel pretty good about their chances the longer the game stays 5-on-5. And I know the Panthers at 5-on-5, they're very comfortable in that situation. So, hey, if they play the whole game at 5-on-5 and there are no power plays for either team, I think we'd all sign up for that. And I think that the Panthers would certainly sign up for that too, and know that they'd feel pretty good about their chances there, because this has been a team that's been, on the plus side of 5-on-5 all year long.
No doubt, and that's the key, keeping this game at 5-on-5, and the Panthers have proven that, especially towards the games 3 to 4 in the Carolina series, where they that was the difference between them getting those wins, and hopefully it carries on for the Florida Panthers past games 3 and 4. But Doug, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this series check-in edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Once again, coming here to get a feel of the Florida Panthers, this time through 2 games in the series. There is no conflicts with the Miami Heat. On Thursday night, the Miami Marlins are off as well, so there is no conflicts as far as radio programming. So tell everybody not only where they can follow you online, but the programming notes for Thursday night's game 3.
Yeah, everything's really consistent throughout these finals. You mentioned it right there. It's the schedule staggered really nicely for all the teams in town. So it's all 8:00 Eastern starts, 560 WQAM, our flagship home. You can catch every game there. And of course, with the 8:00 puck drop, we'll be on the air on 560 WQAM beginning at 7:00 for every game. We'll start our network pregame coverage at 7:30 on our great affiliates, Real Radio 92.1 in the Palm Beaches, and also 100.3 Thunder Country in the Florida Keys. So you can catch all the games there. If you're a Sirius XM subscriber, Sirius 138, XM 220, 932 on your Sirius XM app and streaming platforms. You can always find our broadcast there as well. And if you want to take all the guesswork out of it, the NHL app just makes it incredibly easy with the point-and-click access. The headphone icon up there in the top right corner, and then you just select your feed from there. And hey, hopefully it's our feed. There are lots of great broadcasters working this game, but I'll plug our broadcast there if you go on to the NHL app and find the feed. But yeah, lots of different places to tune in. We thank you for tuning in wherever you tuned in and however you've tuned in and for however long you've tuned in. So thanks very much for a chance to plug the broadcast there. Hopefully everybody finds their preferred method to listen. You can always sync it up too with the national TV feed. If you pause your TV at a whistle and then hit play when you hear that same whistle on our radio broadcast, you should be all synced up if you want to sync up the only local broadcast of Panthers hockey with that national TV feed.
Yeah, and he laid out all the options there, and hopefully Panther fans, you guys find a way to watch it in the way that you guys like. But Doug, I'm having a lot of fun regardless of this team being down 0-2, of just the fact that we're still talking Panthers hockey as this show drops on June 8th. So thank you for coming on throughout this playoff run, and hopefully once this series is wrapped up, hopefully with a championship, we could have you back on to recap not only the Stanley Cup final, but also the run that the Florida Panthers were on. So thank you, Doug, for coming on all throughout all these series throughout the playoffs.
Happy to come on anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And everydayers, make sure to come back for tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show, where Nick Fairbanks will be back on Locked On Panthers to recap Game 3 between the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights. So I'm Armando Velez with Doug Plagens, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.